Okay, guys, the previous video loaded. This is part 2 of 2. Please, if you haven't seen part 1, the video before this, part 1 of 2 first, before this one. They still allow me, the last bastion of freedom is thumbnails, their own thumbnails. I know there's, there's not a problem with their own thumbnails. Hopefully, someday that might change. I want to use the scene in War Games, the movie, to demonstrate how attitudes change. My attitude has changed. I bet a lot of yours has as well. When I first saw this movie, and even the 5 times I saw it after, when they made their way to Stephen Falcon's cabin or home in the Pacific Northwest, wherever it may be, and Stephen Falcon said, I built on this location for a reason. It's right next to a Soviet or Russian target, an ICBM target. We'll be vaporized instantly if anything happens. I remember being like so appalled listening to this as maybe as a kid and then a teenager, thinking like, what's his problem? What? Why doesn't he want to survive? Doesn't everybody will do anything possible to survive? What's his problem? So I didn't like the character anyway, but I really didn't. It really bothered me. And now I'm completely with Stephen Falcon. Yeah, I build it right next to it. I don't want. Let's not get into the sidebar. You know what I'm going to say. Let's build it here. Who wants if anything happens, vaporize me. Who wants to suffer? I'm completely on Stephen Falcon's side today, as my beliefs have come around and I've changed. And, all these heroic efforts to hold on to life if things really get bad, or a nuclear winter, for example, or what. I don't want to do a sidebar. It's not my first rodeo. I got all the suffering and, why would that's to me is like rooting to this reality. It's like raising your hand and saying, I'll do anything to attach myself to this world and reality. I'll go to heroic efforts to survive. And I would go through everything that Aragon went through in the movie The Road. I mean, the most depressing movie of all time, The Road. All they go through they can goods with a few beans and maggots at the bottom. Like, why bother? Really, it's just rooting to this world. Aren't we supposed to be separating from this world? So a certain person will move through the truth community and say, yeah, I want off the radio station. I want off the frequency so I don't take the download. I won't take the awards and the carrots that this society and this system offers me. I want to go off the grid. I want to separate myself from it. That's all great. But, if the shit hits the fan, then how many people will go through the road type heroic efforts, anything to survive? Isn't that the biggest raising of your hand or announcement that all I was doing for the past 10 years was all bullshit, and now because I'm willing to go through heroic efforts, then I'm just so dying to stay attached. Different meaning of dying to stay attached to this reality. Indeed, you'd be overwriting everything that you say you've been doing. That doesn't mean if something happens, just say, oh, just sit there in the middle of your room. I mean, if there's a lake down the road, and get water. But heroic efforts where people, in the road, bands, the humongous gangs form, and people harming people, and anything to survive. And that to me is the ultimate raising of the hand, saying, everything I said was bullshit. Through my deeds, I'm proving I will do anything to stay attached to the precious life and the reality. And I understand. Well, Matt, it's easy for you to say, sitting up there sipping your Sanka coffee. We'll see what you do when the shit hits the fan. I hear you. I can only hope I would be able to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. This, of course, is Mad Max, the Road Warrior, the humongous group. If you're an atheist, I can see you get involved with these nice people. If, I can see atheists, it's all they got. And if a true atheist, all they have is after waiting billions and billions of years after the Big Bang. All they have is this fleeting life. It's all they got. So you want to hold on to it, go through desperate measures, heroic efforts. If you got to join up with Mr. Humongous, should I call you Mr. Humongous or Sir or just Humongous? An atheist's got to do what an atheist's got to do. Think about it. Waiting billions of years to be born into a tiny little microfraction of a microfraction of a microfraction of a 1 millisecond life, 60, 80, 85 years, whatever, you're going to want to hold on, my man. But look, if you are truly, you hold your religion sacred, believing you are much more than this existence, you even forget religion, just a general spiritual person that sees, this is obviously a train stop. It didn't all come down to this one little body. That's ridiculous, dude. Hey, dude, that would be out of sight. It's not out of sight if it just comes down to this body. It's ridiculous. Of course, there's more to it. You don't need any religion or anything to know that. You can sense it in every cell in your body. If you're truly a spiritual person and not an atheist, you don't need to join up with no humongous group. Sure, if something happens and this group shows up to take my chunky soup, I'll defend myself. I need my chunky soup to live out my last 2 months very serenely, enjoying nature. I'm not going to join it, though. I'll fight back against it if I have to.
Matt, just walk away. Matt, just walk away from your chunky soup. There's been too much violence. I'll give you safe passage out of Philadelphia. Just walk away from your stores of firewood and chunky soup, and I'll spare your life.
No, Mr. Humongous, I need my chunky soup. Why don't you go bother someone else? Who's your tailor? And I can offer you other things. I have t-shirts. Would you like to wear a t-shirt, sir? I know you're proud of those muscles, but maybe I have a nice Eagles or Phillies cap instead of that hockey mask. Maybe we can do a deal. One of the greatest emails of all time came to me 6 weeks ago. It said something along the lines of, the greatest cure in the world of all time for atheism is conspiracy research. The greatest cure for atheism is, I forget the tone of the email. It was like, if I only would have known, conspiracy research cures atheism. I'm sure other people have found religion to cure atheism and all that. I'm not taking that stuff off the table. But he says, you get into endless bog and endless conspiracy research, and you get to the same point Matt talks about over and over and over. It's like a reality generation machine. The conspiracy keeps being generated, and then you back up and go, this can't happen in any real world, and tens of thousands of things keep coming, pulled off successfully. Your friends and family never wake up to it. It gets more and more absurd day by day. You're like, no, this isn't real. So obviously, if it's not real, then then there is zero chance of a Big Bang and all that Darwin says, and it's just more and more evidence that you are some sort of immortal being, that whether you got trapped here or whether you came here at your own free will, either way, it doesn't matter. What we're talking, it matters for future conversations, but what we're talking about here is obviously you are something that will go on past this existence, of course. So why would anybody go to heroic measures to survive? To me, it's just it's rooting it's the ultimate root and attachment to this reality. If our job here is to dump our baggage, to let go, then all of that would be done away with if you go through heroic measures to survive and hold on and join the humongous group. There's certainly a reason for the hundreds and hundreds of TV shows, movies, like The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead. There's just endless survival. Even movies like Will Smith and I Am Legend. He's one of the only ones left. Avoiding the zombies, eating moss off the back of a tree, doing anything to survive. The Road is the worst one I've seen. In terms of just really, it's very depressing, very hardcore, anything to survive. And I saw somebody had commented on the last video. As I'm making this, I'm checking comments for the video I just posted, and someone said, Matt, you would think differently if you had children, and I hear you. Okay, I don't have children. Obviously, I'm giving my opinion. People generally know I'm up here with Gray Lady cats, two other cats. I don't have children. Obviously, this is my opinion. I think obviously, if I had two little kids at home, it would be different in terms of me trying to ensure, or the fatherly instinct to ensure their survival. I mean, I hear you, but that's obvious. There's usually multiple reasons at different levels as to why they do things, but a very basic uh, interpretation of why they make these endless TV shows and movies about survival, surviving the zombies, surviving a cataclysm or the end of the world, and they're endless. One is to maybe is a programming to show people, everybody in these movies and TV shows are doing everything they can to survive. And that's what just, of course, would be expected of you if these situations occurred. If these situations occurred, how many people would mimic what they saw in their favorite TV show? Well, Matt, if it's a behavioral programming, doesn't that imply that one of these situations is coming? No, not necessarily. They would always want to program behavior in what they call the human being at the lowest level, the lowest survival only. Survival takes precedence over anything. Animalistic tendencies, lower chakra, all that stuff's outside my pay grade. But of course, they want to push all human responses down low as possible. It doesn't mean that one of these events, massive events, is coming. There's going to be a lot of weird things they throw at us. If that point when they decide to move to the new economic system, they're not going to make it rosy and it's going to be just everybody just gets a free bowl of popcorn for 2 days. They'll make it. It'll be pretty scary for 4 to 6 weeks or more. But that's all by design. What will people do? Will people within a day or two be breaking down the grocery store shelves, or that's the programming of all this behavior. Even if it's just a 6-week period of fear between the old economic system and the new economic system, it will only take a few days for people to start acting like animals. They probably would act like animals anyway, but watching these shows doesn't help. This show, or all of these movies, doesn't mean that a cataclysm is coming. They just want people resorting to these sorts of behaviors as their default and as soon as possible. How many movies show something like this? To me, is very positive. The end of Deep Impact, the movie. There were 2 movies that came out about the asteroid crashing into the Earth. One was Bruce Willis's Armageddon, and right about the same time, Deep Impact, Tia Leone is that when they knew it was going to hit, Tia Leone and her father out there on the beach, just facing it head up, waiting for the 100-foot wave to wash up 50 miles inland. Of course, they'll be instantly killed in this scene from the movie Deep Impact. But it's a scene from a movie. Matt, it doesn't have insightful violins. It's a scene from a movie. But they're facing it head up. How many movies show you that? Like, it's very similar to Stephen Falken saying, I chose this site. I chose to be right next to it when it happens. Poof, I'm gone. Not many. This was made in the late 90s. Has there been a major movie, like a summer blockbuster, made in the last 20 years that shows the heroic facing of death? I know, like a smaller movie or an indie movie may, and a big blockbuster may if it's like swords and sorcery or Braveheart on a battlefield, but people don't really relate to that. That's what happened in 1450 or the 12th century. In terms of the modern just facing of death, with a little fear, of course. I mean, nobody's going to stand out there on the beach as the tsunami times 1,000 comes in and be like, this is cool, and be completely relaxed. But, I bet they wouldn't show this to you anymore. I bet they wouldn't. But again, maybe I'm missing something, but either way, we can agree this sort of facing death with courage is very rare, and it's always about do anything to survive the zombies or the humongous group or the road or whatever it is. It's gone the opposite. It's almost like a programming to keep the animal instincts, the animal nature in people always bubbling up as much as possible. Guys, a quick side note. For this image, I just did a screenshot of this Star Trek Voyager episode, and these were the statistics. In the middle, just did this, I don't know, a few minutes ago. 1119-1119 at 3.3 megabytes for the screenshot. 1119-1119, 3.3. Most screenshots when I pull, guys, are a megabyte and a half. When you just do the drag tool on Apple, I don't think they're usually over 3 megabytes. This stuff happens all the time. So related to what we're talking about here, this Star Trek Voyager episode is called Survival Instinct. These three, the top right, they knew 7 of 9, the Borg. They were Borg drones. Something happens, I forget the details, something happens to their implants where they're unconscious. I remember, they all can hear each other's thoughts. And something goes wrong with the procedure, so they can no longer hear each other's thoughts, and the three can read each other's minds, and they want peace and quiet. So something goes wrong. They can either return them back to become Borg again, the robot race, or they could say 7 of 9 can decide, well, if we sever all of this off, they'll have 30 to 45 days left to live. And she decides that, I think in their position, they would want, if that's the only taste of freedom they would ever have, they will take just 30 to 45 days of freedom where they're alone with their own thoughts for the first time in their lives. In the Borg Collective, there were billions of voices, but something went wrong where the three of them were connected. So if she in the middle says, I've got to go to the bathroom, the other two could hear it and experience what she experiences, and it's some sort of hell. So 7 of 9 thinks, you know what? If they could get 30 to 45 days of pure peace, I think that's what they would want. When I saw this episode, I'm not really sure how to talk about it. It's not going to come out right, but you'll know what I mean. There's something very beautiful in that. If we knew Planet X was coming in 45 days, and you had 45 days, although of course it would be scary, of course we have fears and limitations in this avatar, but there would be something very beautiful about it. It would be close to pure freedom. Like a bill would come in, a late bill. You just wouldn't care. You're worried about, should I get in touch with this friend from college keeps calling, and should I feel pressure to get back in touch with him or her? You just wouldn't care. There'd be nothing. In a way, it would be pure freedom. You say, oh, I just ran up thousands of dollars on a credit card. Who cares? My car's breaking down. Who cares? In a way, it would be the biggest worry in the world, but then it would eliminate all the thousands of little nuisance worries that we're so sick of, especially people in this community. There's something, I watched this episode, and what did they decide to do? One, I think, stayed on Voyager. One decided to go try to find a relative. I don't know. And one went to the space station. I think the older guy said, I'm just going to interact with people for my 30 to 45 days left in this world. I'm just going to interact with people one-on-one. And I've never been alone with my thoughts, and just see how that goes. And, no bills, no fear at that point. Because there's no fear at that point. You could get to that level, even though you're basically living with the biggest fear, if you know what I mean. It's related. Let me just go over to, I've talked about this Nina Simone quote, which was I found inside of an FKJ song. I played it on Free Voice about a year ago. Let's bounce over to this. All right, guys, let me give the background on this and the elements before relating it to what we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes or so, and even part 1 of this video. There is an artist or musician named, I've mentioned before, FKJ, just FKJ. And one of the most amazing performances I've ever seen, if you want to check it out after this video, just write these keywords down in the YouTube search box. FKJ Live Bolivia Salt Flats. Bolivia, and I think there's another keyword is Salar, S-A-L-A-R, but it'll come right up. There's different songs, but there's one video where it's the entire concert where he does all the instruments himself, all the different saxophones, though he does all the instruments, coordinates all the all of it he does himself in this incredible scene in the Bolivia salt flats. Anyway, I did the free voice on this about a year ago. There's one part where he has a soundbite from Nina Simone. I didn't even know who Nina Simone was at the time, but as inside the song, it's her clip from a somewhat famous interview saying, "What's freedom to me? I'll tell you what freedom is to me. It's no fear. It's that simple. No fear is freedom. They can tell you you have all the freedoms in the world. They can tell you all about these rights, and you can go do this and that, and the government's sorry for all they've done to people, and they're going to back off. But if you carry fears, even fear of interacting with your neighbor or something like that, or you haven't seen your daughter for 6 months, and how like strange that'll be when you guys get back in touch, or you carry fear like that, you are not free." So in this interview, it just hit me. And I've looked into the interview since. What is freedom? She says, simply no fear. She says, if I could have that half of my life, most people don't have that for even a minute of their life. Well, she does say in the interview, she says, lots of children have no fear. Yeah, there are times when we are children. I mean, let's just say most people don't have no fear for 1 minute of their adult life. And the entire society and culture is designed to pile on as much fear as possible. But it gets back to that Star Trek Voyager, or what we talked about, if we knew something was coming in 45 days and you just didn't care about what the late notice in the mail, and it's okay. Yeah, I guess, Matt, you don't really want 45 days left to live, do you? No, I don't. But can we get that sort of a mindset now? There would be a beauty to it. You would have the fear of what's coming in 45 days. We are in this avatar. We have limitations, of course. Nobody's going to be perfect. But all the little fears and little problems and all of it would go away. And there's a tremendous beauty in that. But there's something we can do that for ourselves now if we work on it. It might not be achievable by most people, but it's something we can definitely, if we're at level 2 now, if we get to level 7 or 8, that's a huge difference in how we're living our lives. So the ultimate fear is the fear of death. I guess you could argue that ultimately all fears stem from that. So that's what you'd want to conquer first. Most people are hypocrites in this regard. First off, again, we are in this body, this avatar. We have limitations, emotions. You can't say, I'm just going to turn it all off. You simply have to keep working on it. My fear of death has gone down about 95%. I've told that story when I realized my own mortality. When I was, we were down in Long Beach Island. I was 22 or 23 years old. I had no religion, no faith. Some people around me were atheists. It was terrifying when again, I've said many times, like 5 years before that on a multiple choice test, I would have said, sure, I'm going to die, but I wouldn't have believed it at fifth. It came over me in an instant, and it was terrifying. And about 95% of that has been eliminated. I don't think we're ever going to be perfect, but it all stems from the fear of death. So if most people are hypocrites, most Christians are hypocrites, they'll say, I know, we're going to use a Christian as an example. There's people are hypocrites across the board in this regard. The easiest example is a Christian example. Don't get upset at me. How many Christians I have a relationship with Jesus Christ, I have a relationship with the Lord, but then the round after round of chemotherapy. Well, if you have a relationship with Jesus Christ and the Lord, what are you doing to holding on? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't mean you want to throw yourself off a bridge either. But the lengths almost anybody will go through to hold on, that makes no sense. If you believe you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ and you're going to be welcomed into the kingdom of heaven, is it just me, or does that make no sense? Okay, that again, I just used Christian as an example. This hypocrisy is across the board. Like what Rocky said in, I guess it was the first Creed. He's like, he says he was diagnosed with some sort of cancer. He's like, I ain't doing that. I don't remember what happened or how he lived, or I don't remember. He's like, I ain't doing that. I ain't going through that. He's like, I ain't doing it. And again, if you have kids or responsibilities, that's a little bit different. I'm talking about the endless efforts, the crazy efforts people will go through to hold on. It's absurd, especially if they are, say, they're someone of faith. So in that FKJ concert, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 minutes in at the end of a song, the little Nina Simone clip, I have a sound bite. I try to play it over and over as much as I can. I love playing it. It's the way we should live our lives. I've only known that feeling for, oh boy, a 4-week period of my life. Just a 4-week period of my life. After Penn State ended, we had the lease on the apartment. We had to pay for a full year. So we had an additional, I guess had a little bit more than a month paid up on the apartment, but I had to start my job at Silo Electronics. My first job was one of the worst jobs of all time. Silo Electronics. Oh, I'll tell you about that some other time. And up in Reading, it was an hour drive each way in my old Ford Tempo. So I had I don't know, like 4 weeks. And Dad said, just stay. It's all paid for. Just stay up at Penn State before your job. And some of my close friends stayed up, and we took college. Well, this one friend of mine didn't, but I took it too seriously. I studied too much, and all these studying, all the A's and B's, and I didn't get any kind of good job. It was a recession. I got a job in this electronics store. After I was like, what did I study? What did I do all that for? But anyway, so it was very stressful for me trying to get these A's and B's in college and at studying and this and that, and it all ended. Okay, graduation, and okay, fine, and then everything's paid for, the apartment's paid for, and the job doesn't start for 4 or 5 weeks, and there's still some food in the fridge and $400 or $500 or something or in the account, and my girlfriend was still up there, and some of my close friends. And we go to cafes and bars, and there was no responsibility whatsoever. I'd never experienced anything like that. Again, it was pure freedom. You're 21 years old. You're not worried about, you don't have kids. You don't worry about any your health issues. You have no bills. Nothing is in your name. It was literally pure freedom for 4 to 5 weeks before I started that job. Went back to Norristown, moved in with my father. It's nothing I've even come close to since. And society, is designed so that type of freedom just goes away as soon as possible. Matt, don't you want to work hard and buy a house? And if you get transferred out to California, you can make more money and save. And oh yeah, that's a great idea. Let's go to Los Angeles, get transferred out to Los Angeles and don't know nobody. And then, yeah, I can start saving money, but then I need to come back east and buy a house. And then all these bills start and stress of a mortgage and all. And isn't this the American dream? Isn't this what I should be doing? If we could just know what we knew now when we were 20, I mean, would I just immediately have gone and lived in a van? Maybe, basically. I mean, the society and culture, it's designed without anybody being in on it to pile up responsibility with stress, pressure, anxiety. 6 different types of taxes if you're a homeowner. If you income tax, state tax, there's a property tax, there's school taxes. 6, I've counted them up, 6 different types of taxes. But this is what we're told we need to do. Everybody, you want to buy a house, that's how you get free. No, that's how you shackle yourself. Now, I'm attached to the house. I've done all this work on it. I'm here to stay. But boy, if we knew now if we knew then what we know now, oh my goodness, would have done things differently. A quick story about that during that time of absolute freedom when I was up at Penn State for, say, that 5-week period before I had to start the job at Silo in Reading. My grandfather had an excuse to be very, very, very cheap. Okay, he went through the Depression. And he was extremely, I remember as a kid, he would tell me to make sure I turned the shower off and soap up with the shower off, and then turn it back on when needed. I mean, that's now my father had no excuses. I don't want to say, I don't think he's listening to this, but he has the same tendencies, and he has no excuse. Okay, because he was a school teacher at Upper Merion School District, King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and that just he retired after 40 years, and then the magical check for teacher retirement comes in every 2 weeks. That magical check comes in every 2 weeks. He doesn't even spend that anyway. Don't get me started. So I'm up at Penn State, and he says, I mean, I couldn't believe it. You need to go get a job. I had just worked my ass. I worked at the library. Put in 1,000 hours working at the library, $4 an hour. And he says, you have to contribute. I'm not just paying for it. You have to contribute. I did contribute like $3,000 to $4,000 a year. I gave him to help, and I still had $10,000 of a debt when I graduated. And he says, you need to get a job. And for some reason, I bought into it. Now the story works out well in the end, guys. I'll tell you what happened. He said, get a job. I just worked my ass off to get A's and B's for 4 years. I can't take 5 weeks off before I start my job at Silo. For some reason, I bought into it initially. I bought into it. So I had done restaurant stuff, waitering and banquets and weddings and the Nittany Lion Inn. I go up there, and they know a bunch of kids aren't going to show up. They take their 50 people they train, and I bet they know that 20 people aren't even going to, are going to just quit. So we go out one night. I'm supposed to start and work 4 or 5 weeks banquets at the Nittany Lion Inn before I start my job at Silo. And of course, some of my friends go out for drinks at the Rascella or the Gaff or whatever. We go out and 4 or 5 beers, and the next morning comes, and the alarm goes off at 8 o'clock. I have to be up there for a breakfast service, the Nittany Lion Inn. And I was like, sorry for the cursing, guys, but what the fuck am I doing? I said, are you kidding me? This is I didn't realize at the time how precious just that 4 to 5 week period of freedom would be. And I didn't know that would be the only time in my life, but I kind of sensed that I'm not going to work. I still have $400 in this account or whatever it was. Are you kidding me? Fuck this. I just didn't go. I was Mr. Responsibility my whole life. I had to always study for the test, always was liked by the teachers. And I was just tired of being liked and doing the perfect thing all the time. I said, aren't you going to call in? No, I'm not going to go. Look, they trained so many extra people. They know kids aren't going to show up. They're not stupid. So I'm just not going to go. The phone starts ringing. The Nittany Lion Inn starts calling. Aren't you supposed to just tell him? I said to my roommate, tell him anything. I'm just not going. I'm going to enjoy this 5-week period until I have to work a real job. So I said, F that. And then still, even then thinking like, what was my dad pushing me to get a job for 5 weeks? I mean, how cheap was that? Anyway, it's the greatest thing I ever did. There's not too many times in my life I just said F it or quit. It was actually my friend Tony who taught me one of the most important lessons of life. He taught me how to quit. That's extremely important. I always had to do the right thing. Always had to play this sport, even if I didn't like it, because it was what I was expected to do. And he quit everything. He'd go out for tennis and say, I don't like the coach this year. Just walk off the team. He quit everything. And I was the exact opposite. And he taught me how to quit. And ultimately that sounds bad, but ultimately let's worry about yourself. It's taking care of yourself first versus responsibilities or what your parents expect from you. Not that you should just be the opposite and just smoke dope all day and get Fs in high school. No, but there's a middle ground. When the parents expect too much of you, that enough's enough. To go to work for 4.5 weeks before starting a real job, so my father could, not have to pay the last month of rent all on his own. I mean, give me a break. He could afford it. So I said, Tony taught me how to quit. And if you become a quitter, that's not good in life. But to do everything expected of you, that's not good either, because that's completely in the middle of the not milk society culture. Running with the rat race, keeping up with the Joneses, making sure the kid is in cello practice, and if all the kids are playing soccer, making sure your kids are playing soccer. At some point, we need the ability to just say, you know what? we're not doing what the neighbors are doing. F that. Oh, who's calling now? See it. Hold on, guys. So one day we wake up and we realize that, oh, we've played its game on its home field. We've played in Not Milk Society and Culture. We've played its game the exact way it wants me to play it. And then we start to, just doing natural things to start digging out of it. It's like, well, okay, yeah, now I'm not going to be out of the responsibility of the house or whatever, but this junk that I've collected. Like a relative went to move. Matt, do you want this old couch? You didn't have anything when I was there. Oh yeah, I'll take the old couch. And just getting rid of, like, why did I take that old couch? Smells, stinks like his old dog. Like, get rid of it. I called a while back. Other than the giant trash can I had brought in, I called the Veterans of America, whatever, the truck. Just like, take these shirts, take all this junk. What I need, a Everlast sweatshirt. That's all I need, and like a couple T-shirts. I still have too much junk that just over 20 years here. You just, and I don't shop. I don't go to the King of Prussia Mall or anything like that. I don't. The whole society is set up so you have all this junk, even if you don't shop. Like your mother will give you something, or your friends will move and say, hey, do you want this table and chairs? Oh yeah, I'll take it. Or, oh my God. So you just try to dig out and try to simplify the best you can. And that's hard to do. It really is. That's hard to do, but at least it's a first step. And will we ever get back to, unless you're willing to just go off into the van? I mean, that pure freedom that I experienced, it's pretty darn hard to replicate. As long as you're going to still be in the house and all this, I mean, it's not, all this, these nasty things start showing up in the mail, and there's conflicts with neighbors and, like, all the stresses. But at least you come to a point where you realize what the culture and society is designed to do to everybody. And you just cut as many ties as you can to go back as close as you can to a state of freedom, even if you can't even get anywhere near of what you once might have experienced as a kid or a teenager. Or people tell stories that, one guy just went off with his friend and they went to Europe and they just kind of wandered around. Another guy I know, listen, let me just tell you this one last story about, pure freedom when you're younger, before society piles all the stresses and responsibilities up on you. This is a great story. The video's over, guys. It's this last story, but it is a phenomenal story. This guy named Harry, a lot of my friends worked down here at the Vanguard Corporate Center. They were this gigantic customer service center they did the phones, till 8 o'clock at night, about mutual funds, and people would call in and, just customer service, big call center down here. And this guy was always like a loosey-goosey guy, always had that, he never took a lot seriously. I wish I could be more like him. Well, he says, I want to go, he says, I'm going to just want to backpack around Europe for 6 weeks. And everybody down at the Vanguard call center, and we were down in Long Beach Island with him. We'll go, how you can't just take off for 6 weeks. He's like, yeah, I got it all planned out. This really happened. He's like, I'm going to tell my boss that I have a relative, just made it all up. I had a relative die in Spain, and I have to go out there to make sure I can get part of what I'm due in terms of the inheritance. There was no uncle. All of it was made up, and it might have been 4 weeks, but I think it was 6 weeks. And he said, well, they're not going to, he said, yeah, they're going to let it, he guess he's 22, 23, 24 years old. Now he's a little older than us. He's probably about 26. And they've got to have an exception for this to let me take care of family issues or something. And then not that they would pay him during the 6 weeks. So he has it all set up, the lie across the board. And he's just backpacking around Europe, just going to youth hostels, to all these stories about falling asleep on benches high on hash and all this stories and girls he met over there. And then he says, all I got to do is get through one day. When I get back, they're going to ask me about the inheritance. They're going to ask me about all the family stuff I had to go through. I just have to bullshit through that one day. Oh, he did. Some people are bullshitters. I'm not. They would have saw right through me. They'd have thrown my ass out. I cannot lie, or I'm not a bullshitter like this. But so Harry experienced, he probably experienced more freedom than most of us, that type of guy. But that type of experience. But it's usually very fleeting. As soon as we become adults, the society just licks its chops and says, oh, now I'm gonna through jobs, and you're gonna shoot for this promotion, and we're gonna transfer you, and kids and responsibilities, and we're gonna pile. Society says we're gonna pile all this stress and all this shit onto everybody, and it's all not nilk by design, without any one player or any one element being in on it. Thanks for listening, guys.